Want help to grow your business? Download BRiN, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit BRiN.ai or search the App Store today.
G'day and welcome to How I Doubled. I'm your host, Owen Matheson. I'm absolutely passionate about helping private business owners grow. I'm very fortunate to get to know a number of entrepreneurs that are out there making things happen. And over the years, I've seen what they do, got a respect for how they do it. And I now have the opportunity to bring them in and find out more about that. So today I'm with Paul Farrell. He's the co-founder and CEO of ResSleep, which was exited, and now he's on to other things. Paul, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
So, look, there's a lot of things we could talk about when it comes to growth. What I thought was maybe we start out with where it all began for you. You started out on the corporate side.
That's right. Yeah, I
You're
had
a part of a business.
That's right.
Yeah.
I had been for that stint. I'd had a couple of stints at ResMed, a 3-4 year stint, a few years, about 5 years before I started again back at ResMed, and the most recent one before I then got onto ResSleep was about a 9-year stint. So yeah, a fair bit of corporate sort of time there, and at the job that I left, I was vice president looking after the Australia and New Zealand commercial business, and yeah, it was a good journey. It was a great, good company, and it was great to see. I was very lucky to be able to see a company growing really fast, and taught me a lot of things, and it shaped a lot of the way that we organise things in ResSleep. I'd worked at a number of other quite big sort of corporations as well, and that plus the ResMed journey gave me a lot of, I guess, made me a much better equipped person when I started ResSleep.
So for those of you who don't know, obviously ResMed is a pretty great story in terms of Australian business history. To see that from a start to where it is today, that would have been a great experience.
It was, I was privileged and lucky to be able to sort of see that journey. So, look, I think, sometimes when you're, really involved in your business, opportunities happen. It's like when you're on fire, you seem to meet the right people. They talk about making your own luck and so on. And we were really just, we had a terrific team of people back at ResMed, that team that I left, and it was it was sad to leave them, but the opportunity came up out of the blue, and as things sort of do, we were interested in actually 5 clinics in finding a new home for them. Yep. These clinics were a small part of the ResMed business, and that we had sort of established those through osmosis over about a 15-year period. We thought, look, it'd be a good idea to have a clinic to sell equipment at the factory site, because then our engineers could get to know real patients, and they'd have some real hands-on experience with their new innovations. And so that thought it was a good idea, but it turned into a pretty good business. And so, but then ResMed changed sites a number of times. So when it left North Ryde, they thought, look, we're going to keep that business. And then they opened up at Bella Vista in the northwest of Sydney. They opened up a new factory site. So they had a factory site plus the original one, which was then standalone, clinic, if you like, in North Ryde. And the one in Gosford was an attempt to see if they could help in the Central Coast area with a medical, with the sleep apnea condition in that area. It was a bit underserviced, and we worked with a few physicians there, and we tried to combine a service of diagnostics, which the physicians would report on. They didn't own part of the business or anything; they just did the reporting, and then we had the clinic there to sell equipment, and so we sort of it was sort of one of the first times, and they were using mobile equipment. So equipment that at that time it might have been that size. These days it's it's smaller than a mobile phone, and you take it home. It's light, it's easy, and it's probably 70% of the diagnostics now are that kind of you take it home, a tiny little device, and you bring it back the next day. It's downloaded and so forth. But at that time, it was sort of, I think in 2003, when the Gosford Clinic started, that was kind of a sort of something a bit mysterious. I think a lot of physicians knew that it was a great technology and that it worked pretty well, but a lot of those physicians around Australia had invested in millions of dollars into overnight, hospital-type clinics. And they didn't really, there was those that thought, oh, no, that you can't do everything at home, you can't see everything, and it was a little bit controversial because a lot of those traditional labs and a lot of physicians had invested, some serious dollars into those labs, and there was just all their thought and thinking was about, the old traditional lab testing, and so it was a kind of a bit nouveau and a bit scary at the time. Now, of course, that's all 7 out of 10, I would say, a home test, and I think in another 5-10 years, I don't think there'll be anyone that does, a test in a hospital. And given the opportunity for a patient, if you wanted to get tested, 9 out of 10, of course, are going to opt for doing something at home than,
It's a rapidly growing market. We've got to be aware of that the home care market is just the next big thing. And tell me about the clinics pre to going in.
Yeah.
What wasn't working?
Well, look, I think corporations, as they get larger and larger, you lose focus on some of the smaller stuff.
Yep.
The clinics, there were about 250 odd clinics around Australia that were selling equipment.
Right.
And ResMed was the largest supplier of equipment in the world.
Yes.
But they only had 5 clinics, so they weren't really in the services game. They weren't really in retail.
No.
It was a very small part of their business. And so the focus was just lost. And, I was in charge of Australia and New Zealand at the time. And so, we decided that we hired someone to look after those 5 clinics, but it still didn't really work. Right. It might have been a factor that person wasn't the best person, very nice guy, but just wasn't a great fit that didn't seem to improve revenues, and we didn't seem to go anywhere with them. So we just thought the best thing to do of those 5 clinics was to find a new home for them.
All right, so there's a lot going on in the core business. You've got these small clinics that aren't particularly going anywhere at the moment. You've got a great corporate role. Big call. Yeah. Look,
it was a big decision. Look, I think it's fair to say that we had really analysed the market opportunities in the business just as a major player in the marketplace. We had a ResMed when I was working for them. When we had a 65% share of the Australian New Zealand market, and so we really paid attention to what the future was, the opportunity. So we knew kind of what they were. We just weren't in the game of the services and the retail part of it. It wasn't. We were a manufacturer and a wholesaler.
Yep.
And our market share was with the products.
Yes.
But in terms of the people handling the patients, that wasn't our core competency. And so it was sort of a small part. And we had 5 clinics that were established for, different reasons through osmosis over a period of time. So, and they just weren't making a lot of money. We decided they were important enough that we'd try to find a person that could run those 5 clinics. It might have been just a bad fit, or for whatever reasons, just didn't quite work. It didn't make it go forward. And so the next thing was to then find a good home for them. And we thought there was a very large global player, and they're the number one. Well, it's Lindy Gas, or BOC as they're named here, and they're huge. They're the world's biggest player, biggest supplier of oxygen for industrial purposes, and also for healthcare, for medical gases, and that's probably about 20% of their gas business, which is still huge. I don't know what their exact numbers are, but you're talking about a 20 billion sort of euro type of business, and I might have got those numbers, but you can
decent
the point
player.
Is it's a very large company. This was a small part of their business and a small market for them, and but they were playing number 2 to the second largest player in oxygen, and of course these guys see a lot of respiratory physicians, and half of the respiratory physicians in the world are also sleep physicians.
Right.
Because you generally 99% of sleep physicians, you do your respiratory first, and then you do an extra couple of years to become a sleep physician. So these guys, it was a natural fit that you're going to run into sleep physicians all the time.
Right.
So that's how they kind of got into it. The second largest player was they held the dominant position in this market.
Yep.
And so we thought, look, they'll be very interested, and they seemed like pretty good guys. And we were negotiating with them to buy those 5 clinics. Again, I say it wasn't a huge big deal for them. But anyway, the GFC hit, and they were doing $1 billion deal in Europe, but everything from that to this smaller deal happening here in Australia, everything was off the table. And suddenly, bang, we'd been doing it for months, and I swear to this day that if I had been a bit more feisty, we could have had the deal already done. Probably would have been done a few weeks before the GFC, but we weren't in a huge rush, and so my equivalent boss in BOC and myself, we were crying in our soup.
To continue enjoying this presentation, download BRiN, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit BRiN.ai or search the App Store today.